Welcome back to the Strategic Veteran. I'm your host, Adam Peters, and if you've ever wondered how grit and fearless adaptability can chart a 30-year adventure, from leaping out of helicopters into raging seas, navigating the complex world of unmanned aviation, Russ Torgerson's story is living proof. Russ began his Coast Guard journey back in 1986, jumping into the relatively new rescue swimmer program as RS number 68, and for over a decade, he lived rescue missions that most of us have only seen in movies. He's faced the howling winds off of Kodiak, plunged into icy waters near Traverse City, and thrown himself into unknowns that demanded everything: strength, calm, and pure trust in his team. But at his 10-year crossroads, Russ had to decide, does the guy start staring back in the mirror stick with the known path or chase a new challenge? He rolled up the grit, discipline, and sense of purpose that got him through rough seas and shot for more, earning his pilot wings and spending the next phase of his career flying both rotor and fixed-wing aircraft from Alaska to Jersey Shore. Now, having retired as a Coast Guard commander, Russ leans into uncharted territory again, guiding his organizations through the emerging landscape of unmanned and advanced aviation technology. Throughout, he's wrestled with identity, wrestled with leaving behind the camaraderie and sense of mission, and found ways to apply the tenacity of a rescue swimmer and the precision of a pilot and the curiosity of a lifelong learner in every new chapter. Today, Russ brings his hard-won insights in both survival and reinvention to our conversation. Whether you're in the thick of your own transition, wrestling with doubt, or just looking for some direction, you'll find Russ's story as empowering as it is real. So let's dive in. Russ, brother, welcome to the show, man. Welcome to being the first ever Coast Guard veteran on my show. Over 150 of these, and it took that many to get one of you guys. You guys are such a rare breed, man. So welcome to the show, dude.
Thanks, Adam. I really appreciate it. And that was an awesome intro.
Well, you did all those things.
Well, yeah, and one correction, I actually joined the Coast Guard in 84. I became a swimmer in 86. So
Well, either way, I was when you joined, I was not alive, and when you became a swimmer, I was a year old. So, forgive me for the timeline, man. But let's dive into your story, dude, because I think this is going to be a great one. First question for every vet that comes on: where did you grow up, and what inspired you to join?
so I grew up outside of Boulder, Colorado, a little railroad town called Niwot. At the time, we had a post office, a feed store, and a Grange Hall. Now
This
it's
is the
filled
best
with
towns to grow up in.
Yeah. Now it's filled with McMansions, and it's a bedroom community for Boulder. And how did I join the Coast Guard? So I got to back up and tell a story about my dad. So he was a City of Boulder firefighter, did 26 years, and that was going to be the family business. I grew up in and around the firehouse, and I was in high school, and the fire chief pulled me aside, asked me what I was going to do. And I said, I'm going to work for City of Boulder and be a firefighter. And he said, well, you need to grow up and mature. And he said, I can't hire you until you're 21 anyway. So he put the bug to join the military in my ear. And he said, do your 4 years, get out and come see me. Well, I joined and forgot to get out. But and the true story is, it was like January, my senior year of high school, and I was watching Miami Vice. And they always had Coast Guard interspersed in that show, and it was a fast boat. And I thought, that's cool. I never heard of the Coast Guard. I'd seen the ocean one time when I was 6 years old. And I'm like, lo and behold, there was a recruiter in Denver. And so that's what sunk the hook for me.
So really, it was, you didn't look at any other branches. It was just like, I've never heard of the Coast Guard. This looks interesting. Let me go.
Yeah, I mean, I had looked, but not serious. But I saw that, and of course, when you're a 17-year-old kid, you're like, wow, fast boats, and South Florida, Miami. That sounds cool.
Yeah,
And
right. I mean, hey, Miami Vice, dude. I remember that when I was a kid.
yeah, so actually, tomorrow I just looked at the calendar. I joined went to boot camp September 10th, 1984.
Look at that, man.
Yeah, so your timing is perfect for the podcast.
31 years later, here we are telling
Yeah.
the story, man. That's really cool, dude. So I admittedly, I don't even know what questions to ask you about the Coast Guard because you guys are so rare. I've only ever run into in person one of you in my life. He actually lives down the street from me. He's retired after 30 years. It seems like you guys stay in forever too. And he absolutely loved his career, absolutely loved it. And now he manages some pest control company or some shit like that. But
Right.
you guys are a rarity, so I don't even know what questions to ask. I don't know what your MOSs are, how they assign you jobs, but how did you go from joining the Coast Guard to, oh shit, I'm going to be like Ashton Kutcher in The Guardian and be a rescue swimmer? Obviously, that movie would come out way, way, way later, but that's how most of us know rescue swimmers now.
Right. Right. So the Coast Guard is maritime service. So our rank structure and everything is very similar to the Navy. And
Still
so
don't understand those ranks.
right. So instead of an MOS, you have a rate.
Okay.
They call it a rate. And so boot camp, you go to your first duty station and you're a non-rate. So you're an E2, and then quickly 6 months later, you're an E3.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, it's what you can imagine. You get all the crap jobs. And
some guys things never change.
Yeah. Some guys leave boot camp and they go directly to a Coast Guard cutter, or they'll go, in my case, I went to a small boat station, 41-foot rescue boats in Southern California, Oxnard, to be exact. And from there, you decide what you want to do. There is some like guaranteed schools, but a lot of those are rates that are needing people, like being a cook. You could have signed up, got a little bonus, and gone directly to A school and become a cook. In my case, of course, I had no idea what I wanted to do. And your first unit kind of sets the tone. And operating and working and being a crewman on small boats, I thought I was going to be a bosun mate and drive boats for the rest of my career. But I'd been at the station about a year, and a message came out. And of course, this is pre-computer. So we had the actual message that would come out on the paper with the dots on the side.
Oh, no.
Out of the printer. And it was talking about the new Coast Guard Rescue Swimmer Program. And so that was in 85 when that program started. And actually, my wife and I are headed to Kitty Hawk, North Carolina in October for the 40th anniversary of the program, the swimmer program.
That's really cool, man. So I assume with RS number 68, you're one of the first people to go through the program.
Yeah, it started in 85. I graduated in September of 86. So yeah, in that first year and a half of the program started. And there's only two that I know of. There's only two jobs in the Coast Guard that actually assign numbers, and those are rescue swimmers and what they call surfmen. The rescue boats that go out that can do the 360, those guys, they're badass. And that takes a long time for them to train up and get proficient at that. And so they're also assigned numbers. So, and I believe the swimmer program, 40 years later, we're up to about 1,200 swimmers total in the entirety of the program.
That's not a lot.
So,
that's not a lot. Did you know what you were getting yourself into with I mean, particularly being such a new program? There's no stories, there's no guys you could go reach out to for any kind of like guidance or advice or inside information into what selection is going to be like, what the training is going to be like, or even what the job is. I'm sure you had a brief overview, but did you really know? Like, because the ocean scares me, man. That's a big, deep place, and like I'm a land mammal, so I don't know. I can swim well, but like I don't think I could swim that well.
I had no idea, and like you said, there wasn't the internet, there wasn't guys I knew doing the job, and literally it was a message that described what it was going to be, and at that small boat station, every once in a while we would do helo ops, they called it, where they would send a helicopter up and practice hoisting to our boat. And so I had been hoisted up into a helicopter and back down one time. And that was really cool.
I bet.
And again, at that point, 18, getting ready to turn 19. And I was young and dumb and fearless. And,
I know the rest of that statement. Yes.
Yeah. And part of that background in all through high school, I swam on the swim team, average swimmer, and I taught swimming lessons, and I was a lifeguard. So
Fit
I
right in.
thought, oh, I can do this. I know the water, and it actually worked well because the pool I worked at in high school, my best friend, who I call my brother, we've known each other since we were three. We were the young guys, and a lot of the lifeguards were college age dudes. And so after hours, we'd have parties, and they would just beat the crap out of us. And I learned very quickly that when they grabbed me in the pool and held me under, if I didn't fight back, they would give up eventually.
Yeah.
And little did I know that would play into going to swimmer school and being comfortable in the water and some of those scenarios. So that played well.
So what was, as much as you can disclose, obviously I'm not looking for all of it, but what was the training like? What is that pipeline? How hard is it? What's the attrition rate? Is it similar to like what the well-known Rangers or Navy SEALs? Like, is it similar? I assume.
Yeah. Yeah, I think they advertise about a 70% attrition rate.
Okay.
And when I joined the program, so everything for aviation, all the A school training is in Elizabeth City, North Carolina, and so there was a pool there. But at the time, the Coast Guard did not have its own rescue swimmer training center. And so they would do a pre-workup, and then we went to Pensacola and used the Naval Helicopter Training Center.
Okay.
And ironically, again, two of my instructors, a few months after I graduated from Pensacola, actually went to Leavenworth for killing a guy.
Oh dear.
So they used to do this thing, and again, training has gotten way smarter and safer now, but it's still very difficult. But they used to do what they called smurfing, and they'd take guys and they'd hold them under till they pass out and then bring them back up real quick.
No,
And
thank you.
and that never happened to me. I never passed out, but there was a young gentleman that had a undiagnosed heart issue, and he never was able to be revived.
Damn.
And so it was kind of Wild West. And go ahead.
I was going to say, what would you say gets most people in that pipeline, stopping them from making it through?
I think that's a great question. I think it's mental. It really is. And I know we've never met face to face. We've talked several times on the phone, become friends. I'm only 5'7".
Right.
And, when I was 5'7" and 150 pounds going to swimmer school at 19 years old. So I was not a physical specimen, but I was comfortable in the water.
Yeah.
And I used to always joke because everybody in the water is only as tall as their head.
That's it, man. It's so true.
I don't care what was down below. And so I think it was a mental thing. And at the time, what you can't put a label on it. It's just like, I'm going to do this. We used to always joke, they can kill us, but they can't eat us. And
that's comforting.
Yeah. And years later, so that swimmer school got shut down because of that incident. And then the Coast Guard decided it was time for them to build their own program. So they brought everything in-house a few years later. And ever since then, it's done entirely within the Coast Guard spectrum.
So how was it, man? You make it through. You're a rescue swimmer. What is that career field like? Like, is it like the movie? Like, is it intense like that? Is it lulls in the, like, I mean, are you going in, I kind of would equate, in my mind, it's almost like, firefighters, right? You look at like structure firefighters in the cities, and right now they're going and dealing with like drug overdoses and some bullshit calls. They're not really fighting a lot of fires. I often wonder, like, how many times are you actually going out to actually do real rescue?
And again, the answer is it depends.
Right, of course. But, I mean, we don't have any frame of reference for any of this because I feel like as land dwelling mammals, we don't think about that. I mean, most people aren't even comfortable in the water. They're never going to have a boat on open ocean. You know what I mean? That's expensive, right? Like that's for people with money or people who save up and go on these, giant chartered fishing trips that cost tens of thousands of dollars, like that kind of thing. So I just think it's not in front of us. I'm sure it happens more often than we know.
And a lot of it was medical. So as a rescue swimmer, you're also an EMT.
Mm-hmm.
So we would do a lot of medical, and the actual, going down and pulling somebody out of the water. It happens. It happens often, and it seems to be and I've done a few of those. But there's always that guy that you work with that gets all of them. It's just timing, and the way we worked, and they still do. It's you said fire department, very similar. So
Mm-hmm.
for the majority of my career, every fourth night I was 24 hours on duty. So every Coast Guard air station, they have a crew that's there, ready to respond for 24 hours. Then you go off duty, and that's just a cycle. Every fourth day, you're there. And so it's the luck of the draw. And ironically, some of the units, like when I was in Kodiak, when you got called out, you knew it was going to be something real.
Mm-hmm.
When I was stationed in Traverse City, and I was also stationed in Detroit, Michigan as a swimmer, we got called out all the time, but you never knew if it was going to be real or not. But we were as busy in Detroit as we were in Kodiak because the amount of boaters in the Great Lakes.
Yeah.
And then when the ice would come, we would transition to ice fishermen. That was a huge thing.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah.
Well, people forget the Great Lakes up there. They're huge. They might as well be oceans. They're giant.
Yeah. Yeah. And they can get very nasty.
Yeah, they really can, especially like Michigan. I think it's one of the nastiest ones, isn't it?
Yeah. Michigan, I think Lake Superior is the worst.
Okay.
And then Lake Michigan. Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
how was Kodiak? I can't imagine doing look, I don't like to be cold and I don't like to be wet. And so you're putting both of those like to the extreme. How was Kodiak?
that was my swimmer career. I laugh now because I have a couple of groups that I'm involved with. And of course, everybody's trying to be healthier and better. And so the cold plunge is a big thing. And
That's easy for you. That's a Monday.
no, I'm done with that. I always joke. I said I cold plunged as a profession. I don't need to prove it to anybody now. So my hot tub on the deck, that's my speed now.
I love it, man. I love
Yeah.
it. So you did the rescue swimming thing for 10 years, and then you're like, hey, I think I'm done with this. Let me go learn how to fly because that looks cool.
Well, yeah. Well, and you're a crewman, right? So you're on a crew with two pilots and what we call the flight mechanic. So he was the hoist operator in the aircraft. So, and most of my time was spent in a H-65 Dolphin helicopter. Actually, it's over my right shoulder here. I don't know if you can see it on camera, but anyway, it's the orange helicopter. That's how we describe it.
Traditional Coast Guard helicopter.
My son makes fun of me because I was on another podcast and I said, "Yeah, the orange helicopter." And he goes, "That's the best description you could give." So
everybody knows what you're talking about.
Yeah, the MH-65. Now they're up to the Echo model, but so you're in and around involved in it and flying as a crewman, and I was in Detroit, and I had two pilots that really didn't get along very well, and they literally were fighting in the cockpit, and I was approaching that 10-year mark, and I kind of held the pilots at this on a pedestal, and for good reason. Their Coast Guard aviation is top notch, and again, as I had done some schooling here and there. At one point I was like, I'm going to get out and be a cop, so I was doing some criminal justice, and then changed my mind. I'm like, oh, I'm going to be a business guy, so I did a business management degree. And so I was accruing credits and thinking about going to OCS. And I'm like, I don't know if I have what it takes. And like I tell
Says
my
the rescue swimmer.
yeah, and I keep showing up. And I tell my grandkids and my kids to just keep showing up. And for me, the up means unfinished purpose because you never know what you're going to get. And they were fighting in the aircraft, and I remember landing at the unit and throwing my helmet across the ramp. I was so pissed. I'm like, these guys are knuckleheads, and if they can fly a helicopter, I can fly a helicopter. And so, and ironically, one of those pilots is still a good friend of mine and lives about 15 minutes from me right now, and we still talk. Um, so that started my path of applying for OCS, and it took me my fourth try to actually get in. And you talk about good leadership. I had a commanding officer. On my third try, I didn't get it, and I was like, I'm done. He goes, well, you're going to apply again, right? And I said, I don't think so. If they don't want me, screw them.
Yeah.
And he looked me dead in the eye and he goes, I never thought you were a quitter.
Oh shit.
Oh, that hurt. That
Yeah,
hurt.
of course. Yeah.
So I applied again, and that was when I got picked up.
Man, how did you find flight school? Because we actually have this in common. I went to flight school when I got out of the Army. It was always my dream to become a pilot. However, I did not enjoy flight school. Flying was not at all what I had made it out to be in my mind. Particularly, I went from private to commercial in 18 months. I did it in Washington, right around, I did it at Clover Park. So, right where I was at.
Yeah.
The challenges with weather, particularly doing instruments because no icing, the freezing level is really low, all of that stuff. But I always thought they were going to teach me how to take off and land and then fly the long distance point A to point B, and I'm going to enjoy it, right? I didn't realize it was going to be maybe 50 hours of that and 200 hours of turning maneuvers in a box in the sky. And it's in a tiny airplane. And I'm sure helicopters are obviously different, but you also have the fixed wing experience. And so for me, I just burn out, man. It's constant nose in the books. It's constant instructor level knowledge of the systems of the aircraft and all the piloting and all of that. It was just too much for me. It just took all the fun out of it. So I was like, I'm done. I'll go make my money. I'll buy my own airplane and I'll fly for myself because general aviation is so much more relaxed than professional aviation. So
Right.
how was your experience? Was it everything you thought it was going to be, or did you find kind of the struggles I'm talking about?
Yeah, it was a challenge. And again, with me being a slow starter at almost everything I do, I had I had a wife and two kids at flight school. Um,
Yeah, good
Everybody
luck.
else around me were young guys, either just out of college or had a Coast Guard career, had gone OCS, Officer Candidate School, and single. And so I had to really challenge myself to make sure I had the study time it took. And I actually had to have an age waiver to go to flight school because I had missed it by like 6 months. And so I was able to get the age. Everything's waiverable, right? So
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. And so I was able to get that waiver. And so that put a little pressure on me because I knew people had gone to bat for me to get that waiver. So that was always in the back of my mind. And so we use uh, naval in Pensacola, Milton Field, naval aviation training. And so you spend time flying the T-34 fixed wing two-seat training aircraft. And I didn't know what I didn't know. And there was times I struggled with that. And then once you graduate that, you go to your advanced training, which was helicopters. And I'll never forget sitting in the helicopter the very first time and starting it and seeing the rotor blades start spinning up. It was a sigh of relief. I'm like, oh, I'm home.
Yeah.
After 10 plus years being in a helicopter, it felt
Right.
and so once I hit the helicopter phase, it wasn't nearly as hard because I was so excited. to be there.
That definitely helps, right?
Yeah.
So my aviation career, I wanted to fly helicopters, but as a civilian, I looked at it logically, like, man, the challenge of getting a job in the civilian world as a helicopter pilot because of insurance and expensive parts and some of the, I mean, it's not like a fixed wing, right? Like where I can fly anything up to 12,500 pounds right now and multi-engine, right? However, helicopter, you have to have so much time in that specific airframe. And I was just like, I think that made learning to fly a lot harder for me, maybe a reason why I burn out. Because that was always my plan, was to fly private jets for really rich people that have helicopters, kind of get dual certified in both and kind of coast in a career. But I just burn out, man. Turning maneuvers in a box in the sky. If I never do another fucking Chandelle or Lazy 8 in my life again, I'll be happy. You know.
I get it. And I think the other thing too is, to be honest, I was getting paid to do it.
Yeah, see, and I was paying to do it, right?
Yeah.
Like the GI Bill's covering some of it, but it's not covering enough of it, because that's the other thing they don't tell you when you go to flight school is like, yeah, you can get a private pilot license in 60 hours, but you're probably not going to do that because you're going to spend 15 or 20 hours learning how to land before you understand how to land, but before your brain and your body catch up to actually be able to do it, you know?
Right. So I guess to summarize your question, it was a challenge, and but at the same time, I was just so excited to be there, knowing that this was going to be my new career within the Coast Guard, which was, my comfort zone. And it really played well for me when I transitioned from flight school and went to my first unit flying H-65s. I had an advantage over, like, I have a really good friend of mine that we did OCS together, flight school together, and we went to our first unit together. And he was directly out of college, went to OCS. That was his first experience in the Coast Guard. And then our training from that point on was exactly the same. When we got to the first unit and we're flying in the aircraft, you're a co-pilot, so there's a lot of training that you still do on the job, right? So you're still learning how to fly this thing, learning how to run a mission. But I had been on so many missions at that point. I knew how to talk on the radio. I knew what to look for. I knew the script.
Right.
Things would go down, and I knew where things could go wrong. So that was one less thing I had to learn or worry about. And so, like
it's already ingrained in you. You already know.
Right. And so my buddy Toby, he had to learn all of that at the same time he was learning how to fly the aircraft better.
What seat are you flying in as a co-pilot in a helicopter? Is it the left seat?
Left seat. Yeah, it's backwards.
It's backwards from an airplane. Yeah. It's weird to me because I'll tell you, when I was doing CFI, it was really hard for the first 5 or 6 hours to transition to that right seat. You wouldn't think it would be such a big change, but it's totally different.
No, you're 2 feet different from where you were before, but yeah, it's a whole different world.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. So you would finish your career as a pilot, correct?
Correct.
What was the decision to retire? Because as an officer, you, in theory, could probably still be in, right? I mean,
well, genuinely. Yeah, because I had over 10 years enlisted, you could do 30 years as an officer. So I could have done 40 years. And the decision to retire, so I had met my my current wife, my third wife, and she's absolutely amazing. So I've been retired 10 years now. So we've been together 14. So she came later in my career.
Mm-hmm.
And I had always been in an operational unit. I never did a headquarters tour or anything out of aviation in my entire career. And I had made 05 commander. And I think in your world, that'd be a lieutenant colonel.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. And so my day job as a pilot was what they called an aeronautical engineer. And that sounds like slide rule and pocket protector. I was a aircraft maintenance manager, so I looked out and after all the mechanics on the hangar deck, all the aircraft maintenance. And that was a program that you did a year of training, and then you were an assistant engineer, and then you got your own unit eventually.
Yeah.
And I absolutely love that. And politically incorrect. So hanging out with maintainers and super smart guys that know how to fly on these helicopters and maintain these helicopters. I could look at a guy and go, hey, I am going to take you out back and make you smell your own ass. Don't do that again. And they'd be like, Roger, got it.
Yeah.
I worked myself out of that job, and I was doing an admin job. Still at an air station, but I was doing admin. And one day, one of our swimmers, who I had an affection for, obviously, and he was just the greatest guy, and he was always a jokester and always harassing people. And he was in admin, and my door was open to my office, and I heard him give him a hard time. And so we called him Noodles, and I'd be like, Noodles, quit harassing the help. Get out of here. Yes, sir. He leaves. 2 days later, one of the ladies that worked in the office, they called them yeomen, they're admin folks, came in my office in tears and said, can we talk? And I said, sure. And up to that point, I only had tissues on my desk when I had a cold. But when I was working in admin, I had a tissue box because people would come in and have some emotional breakdowns. And she's crying, and she said, hey, the other day when Petty Officer so-and-so was in the office and you referred to us as the help, that was very offensive.
Oh, boy.
And I said,
oh, boy.
I apologize. That won't happen again. She left my office, and I wrote my retirement request right then and there.
Yeah, I imagine you did.
And to add to that, my only two options at that point, when I was getting ready to transfer, was to go to D.C. to headquarters, or Elizabeth City, North Carolina, where we have our aircraft depot maintenance, where all the aircraft are stripped down every 4 or 5 years, rebuilt completely, and then sent back to the field. And my wife is from a suburb of Portland, and she was not going to leave the Northwest, and I didn't want to leave the Northwest, so that's why I retired.
Yeah, I
imagine. And after a complete 31-year career, I'm like, okay, it's time. And I wasn't flying nearly as much because I had worked myself out of that. More admin than anything.
That's common. I see that all the time with pilots. It's like after major or 04, the 05 is like the death sentence. It's admin from there on out. My first wife, her father was a F-14 pilot, and he could have climbed all the way. He could have had a star if he wanted it, but he loved flying so much and retired when they'd said, you can't fly anymore. We're going to make you a fleet commander or whatever the hell they call them in the Navy. And he was like, yeah, no, I'm not going to do that. And then picked up a job flying for UPS for the last 20 years or whatever.
Oh, there you go.
So we're getting into your transition and retiring. And particularly, I mean, you may be one of the longer guys I've ever had on here with a 31-year career, which is incredible. Congratulations, by the way. That's dedication. What did your transition look like? How was it for you? Did you have plans? Were you looking at taking your experience from particularly being a pilot into the civilian world and flying? And if you did, how did that go? And if you didn't, why not?
Oh, those are great questions that I've struggled with for the last 10 years. Excuse me. I actually looked at some flying jobs. There was a company that was based in the Gulf Coast, supporting oil rigs. And I'd gone through an interview process, and then I realized that it was like 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off. Mm-hmm. And they said, you can live anywhere you want. And right before I signed the job offer, I asked the question, I'm like, well, do you pay for my travel? And they're like, oh, no. so you can live anywhere you want, but, a third of your paycheck is going to be used traveling back and forth twice a month.
Right.
And I'm like, no. And the other thing was, kind of like the old cat with 9 lives. I felt like I used up 8.5 in my Coast Guard career, and I'm like, I don't know if I need to continue to fly. And hindsight, I wish I would have, but it's okay that I didn't. And so as I was retiring, I got hooked up with a former swimmer, again, the mafia, that was working for a Boeing company called In Situ that built and operated the Scan Eagle. It was a UAS platform.
I remember it. Yeah.
And they were courting the Coast Guard to get the system on the Coast Guard cutters, and they needed a program manager. And I thought, that sounds like a great job. Well, by the time I retired, they didn't have the contract yet. So I joined the company and became an operator, went to Afghanistan and flew it over there. And then finally the contract hit. So I came back and was a program manager for that.
Is that what you're still doing now?
No. So that's a long story. So I burned some bridges, right? So I was a program manager for the Coast Guard contract. And at some point I decided that I didn't want to be known as the Coast Guard guy for the rest of my life. And
this is important for those of you who are listening. You might want to pay attention to this story, because he's about to touch on one of the biggest problems we hold on to when we get out of the military. So please pay attention to what he's about to say. If you don't pay attention to anything else,
that identity, right?
Yeah.
And I don't care if you've done 4 years in the service and got out, or in my case, 3 decades and got out. It was my identity.
Mm-hmm.
But there's so many things, so many rabbit holes I want to go down.
Let's go. Let's
talk about burning a bridge. So a program manager, working with the guys in headquarters, installing on the ships, getting the program up and running. That was awesome. Supporting my own alma mater, right? And I had a chance to go to Hurricane Harvey, and I didn't even know the company had a commercial operations team, is what they called it. So I ended up going down to Hurricane Harvey in hopes of helping the Coast Guard open the port in Corpus Christi, using the Scan Eagle to do surveys, etc. You get down there, and obviously the Coast Guard contract was only for the ships, not any land-based stuff. And so we had about 15 guys and gals that came down there in the day after the hurricane hit. So it was still a disaster area. And I started and stayed on for 2 weeks, and I was managing that team. I was right back in my element. I was in an operational mindset, not the program manager mindset, but I had troops on the ground, making sure you're taking care of those guys, things that I really enjoyed. As soon as we got back to Southwest Washington, and the Columbia River splits Oregon and Washington, and on the Oregon side, there was a huge Eagle Creek fire. It was a huge forest fire in the Columbia River Gorge. And we had a contract with the Department of Interior to fly firefighting wildfires. And so I stayed on with that team for another week doing that. And then the guy running the team said, hey, I need an assistant manager. Do you want to come work for me? And I'm like, absolutely. So I burned the Coast Guard PM bridge and did the operations stuff. And then a year and a half later, they shut that program down and we all got laid off. So, but in that time frame, that 4 years from retirement to getting laid off, I was overweight, depressed,
check,
a drunk,
check,
and I was totally lost.
Check.
And I at the time I didn't know what it was. I know now what it was. I had lost my identity, right? Because particularly after 3 decades, I grew up from 18 to whatever it was, 49 in the Coast Guard.
Yeah.
And I thought transitioning to the civilian world, and I never really wore my rank on my shoulder as far as like, oh, I'm a commander.
Right.
I demand respect. And there's those guys out there.
100%. I hate those guys.
Because you have the positional power, right? Not the personal power, but you have those shoulder boards on. But at the same time, as a commander, I had staff, and I could say, "Hey, could somebody do this for me?" And it would get done. And now I was left on my own devices, and I got to do all this myself. And what I discovered was, you have friends at work, but you don't have teammates. And any mission, in the helicopter, you got 4 guys, you got 2 officers, 2 enlisted guys, but it didn't matter, because that any one of those people could save your life. And even if you didn't really care for them outside of work, you trusted them when you were in the aircraft. And that sounds a little dramatic, but it's true. And when you're working in the corporate setting, you don't trust anybody.
Yeah, for sure. You just nailed everything. So well articulated, because that's exactly what I experienced. I never wore my rank on my shoulders either. I was only a staff sergeant, so E6, but you don't have the squad around you, right? Like, shit rolls downhill famously. So I go to the morning meetings in the war room. I get the task for the day as the platoon sergeant. I pass it down to my squad leaders. They make sure that the team leaders know, and then Joe goes and executes and all of that. And then you get out, and it's just like, oh, like, first of all, where the absence of orders. I don't have any now. Like, who's writing my orders? Where are these coming from? I don't know what to do with my hands. Like, I can only imagine. I only did 13 years. I can only imagine adding 18 years, more than double my career to that. Particularly, I came in at 17 like you did. So, from 17 to 30, all I knew was infantry, global war on terror, army. That's it. That's who I am. Right. Never had a chance to develop anything outside of that, particularly with our op tempo. I did 4 deployments, which is, that's up there for a lot of people, particularly for regular Army guys, because it was 12, 16, 12, and 10. You know what I mean? So almost 50 months overseas. That's a long time.
Right.
So,
well, and yeah, because there's policies and procedures that have been in place for decades, right?
It's a machine, man, and you adapt to the machine, and it becomes a part of you, and it's so hard to let go of.
Well, I was also thinking this morning before we started the podcast, one of the nuances of the Coast Guard versus the other DoD services is primarily our units are small.
Yeah.
And we don't have huge government housing. In Kodiak, we did have a lot of government housing because it was an island and it was needed. But for the most part, most of our units are very accessible. You become embedded in a community, and you're not living on base 24 hours a day, working on base like in a DoD setting. So I think there's a little advantage there, because quickly your friends were civilians, and you had your guys you worked with, and those are the guys you wanted to hang out with just because of the mission and the job you did. So the civilians didn't understand what you did.
Right.
But you would make friends in every town that you were stationed in because it was easier. And a lot of, you said you weren't aware of the Coast Guard. If you had grown up in a coastal town somewhere in America, you would have known the Coast Guard.
Yeah, but I grew up in southern Indiana, so
there you go.
No shot for. I don't even think because all of the branches recruiting shared the same building, and I genuinely cannot remember seeing a Coast Guard recruiter in that building at all. I'm sure he may have been there. I mean, logically, it would make sense because it's still military recruiting, right? But they're not after you like the Marines and the Army and the Air Force. They're not coming to the school, twice a month or whatever to recruit, so I never saw them. And again, I only had 2 duty stations. I was at Fort Stewart, Georgia, and then Fort Lewis, Washington, which you just mentioned, the Columbia River splitting, Washington and Oregon. It's one of my favorite approaches ever into Kelso Longview, over the river and the dam and all. It's such a fun approach if you're approaching from the north, from south to north to land north. One of the coolest, just flying over the gorge there and the river and the dam and the locks. And it's like, man, am I going to hit the water here? But I absolutely love the Pacific Northwest. But even when I was stationed at Fort Lewis, and I spent 10 years, I did my last few years and then stayed as a civilian in Olympia, I still didn't run into the Coasties. Never did. Never saw them. Never ran into them. Didn't talk to them. I live near Patrick Space Force Base. I know the Coast Guard's obviously in Florida, all over Florida, lots of places in Florida. And I still don't run into them, but I can throw a rock and hit an Army guy or an Air Force guy. You know what I mean?
Right.
So speaking to how small the Coast Guard really is, I think that is an advantage for you guys, because it forces you to get, like you said, into the community, which is what we don't do in the other branches, because we are bigger and we're surrounded by people like us all the time. I think you are at an advantage to making friends, learning how to network with people that aren't military or whatever. So I do think you're onto something there.
Right. Well, but again, the same issues. I don't care if you're, Army, Marine, Navy, Air Force, Space Force. I thank goodness for the Space Force, because that gave the Coast Guard somebody to make fun of.
Everybody gives the Space Force so much shit, but logically, the reason we have Space Force makes sense, because all the branches had space MOSs or jobs, and all they did was take them and put them into their own branch, which to me makes sense.
It does. Because, being a Coastie, we get the brunt of everybody's jokes.
Right.
And
so it's good for you guys to have somebody to pick on now.
Right. But the, and you can go into Coast Guard trivia, the oldest continuous seagoing service in America, because after Revolutionary War, the Navy disbanded for a little bit, then came back on. So 1790 till now, and Coast Guard's been involved in every conflict the U.S. has ever had since 1790, but you just don't know it. My favorite picture is 2 Marines holding up a sign that says, "Thank you, Coast Guard, for putting us on Guadalcanal or Guam during World War II." So, but anyway, back to the transition topic for you. So fat, depressed, alcoholic, struggling, again, really depressed. And I was just totally lost. And I overuse the word, but it's true. I lost the tribe. And one thing that we can maybe dig into too is the PTSD. It's as real for most Coast Guard guys that I know as it is for somebody that spent the time you did in overseas. And I think the analogy is still back to like a firefighter or first responder in the States, because what we did was continuous. You never knew, every time you went on duty, are you going to, I have literally picked out more deceased people out of the water than alive people.
Yeah.
And so it's at least on a deployment, and I'm not minimizing anything. I just want to try to explain the difference as I see it. You're there for a amount of time, and you're going to see awful things, and then you come back, and it lives with you. The Coast Guard, it's a continuous your entire career.
I think about this perspective all the time, particularly when you start looking at law enforcement, right? Like they're doing it on their home soil, and it's every single day, all same, just every day. And I do think about that a lot. And so, it definitely resonates with what you're saying about how it was for you in the Coast Guard. And, particularly with you're saying picking up more dead bodies out of the water than alive bodies. That's a hard pill to swallow, because we know we have the data to prove what's driving the suicide epidemic. It's moral injury. It's really not anything else. It's moral injury that drives all of it. It turns out that when I went and started to heal myself through plant medicine and all of that, I thought I was going to have to go deal with all the atrocities of war and all the shit that, I did or received or whatever. What it really was it turns out I was okay with 99% of that. What I wasn't okay with was picking up buddies' body parts, or having to put somebody in a body bag that wears the same flag that we do, and that's really what fucked with me. And then you stack unresolved childhood trauma on top of that, and it's the recipe that you're talking about: depressed, fat, alcoholic, miserable.
Yeah, and it's hard to break that cycle. And I'm so grateful that you have been doing this. What do you say? You're 150 plus episodes?
Yeah, something like that. I lost count, and I have a solid count in a database somewhere, but I just kind of throw out 150 because I know I'm over that at this point.
Right. Well, and your mission's so important, brother. So important. And that transition piece, it's individual, right? So
It is.
there's not one specific formula that we're going to be able to latch onto and say, hey, if you're going to get out of the service, you need to do ABC and you're going to be just fine. And I know, I've seen guys get out and they just thrive immediately. But for the most part, I'll never forget when I was getting ready to retire, I had friends of mine that were a couple of years further down the road, like on the retirement path. And in my mind, when I got my first job, that was going to be a 20-year job.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to, I'm going to work for this company and do 20 years. What nobody ever told me is in the civilian world, people switch jobs like I changed my underwear. They're like, and it didn't make sense to me when I had friends that are like, oh, I'm working for, this company. And then 6 months later, they're like, oh, nope, I'm working over here now. And they just kept going through different career paths. And that didn't compute in my brain. But finally, after about 4 years of being retired, I'm like, oh, I get it. I'm not beholden to the man. I'm not, just because I have this job doesn't mean I have to stay here.
Right. You're only beholden to yourself. And that's kind of my message is like, man, stop listening to all the noise and the expectations of others and set your own. Have the conversation with the man in the mirror.
Yeah. And those are the hardest conversations to have.
They're so hard, man.
So I read something the other day. If everybody around you is an asshole, you need to look in the mirror and look at the real asshole in your life.
Seriously. Yeah.
You may be the problem. But I think there's so many avenues now that guys, it's getting somebody to seek the tribe, the help, the encouragement. And I think that's where a lot of us got stuck is where do I go? What do I do? Number one, you're embarrassed, right? You're like, oh, I had a badass career and now I'm lost. I don't have any, let me back up. I had friends and I had my Coast Guard buddies, but we're spread out all over the country. I didn't have anybody down the road from me to go, hey man, can you come over and talk to me? I need somebody to talk to.
Yeah. And we won't pick up a phone, man. Like I'm guilty of that too. Even if they are spread out across the country, because it's the same thing that you're saying. It's not like I didn't have friends or people that I could talk to, but for me, it was also because I was medically retired. So all of my friends, my peers, our career paths that had mirrored each other, they're still very much doing the Army thing. Like they may not, they're in the field, so they can't pick up the phone, particularly when I need to talk, or they're on another deployment. And then that adds more to the, the FOMO or the moral injury and like, I should be there, and all of that. And it just compounds, man. I totally understand what you're saying. And I know everybody listening to this, I know they've been through a version of this. That's the thing. That's why I do this show. That's why it's in the format that it's in, because if you and I having this conversation, me helping you tell your story and your perspective, shine some light to that person that's about to get out and walk this path. You don't have to make the same mistakes Russ and I made, period. You just don't. You don't have to stop PTing and get fat. You don't have to get depressed because now you're fat and you're a shell of what you used to be. You don't have to retreat to the bottom of the bottle because you're afraid to go talk to somebody and ask for help. Like you can do all of the opposite of those things and ask for help and do PT, and PT will change and shift your mental health so you avoid the depression. Like if we just focus on those things and hang on to like those things from our military career, that would be way better than hanging on to the identity of the uniform and the rank and the responsibility and the orders and all of that. Like take some of the stuff, but leave some of the other stuff.
Yeah, 100%. And I think the three most dangerous words that a guy can say is, I've got this.
Yeah.
I've got this. And the guy said, I told myself that for years. I've got this.
Yeah.
And I did not have it at all.
Yeah.
But like you said, I think our ego, and because you don't want to be that weak guy, because we grew up not showing your weakness, right? You're getting ready to go on a mission. You don't want to be the weak guy in the stack, right?
Nope.
and same with flying. You don't want to be that weak guy in the aircraft.
Right.
So when we transition, that mindset's still there.
Yeah.
I'll be honest. It took me 9 years to do my VA disability.
Damn, brother.
Because I said I got the and I in my so here's another rabbit hole to go down is I just had this conversation yesterday with some folks about the warrior mindset. And I looked, if somebody a couple of years ago said, what's a warrior? The first thing that comes to mind is what you did overseas. The door knockers, the snake eaters, all those guys. I'm like, oh, they're warriors. But it's a warrior mindset. It's not the job you do. And like we said, that single mom that's busting her ass for her two kids, the dad's not in the picture and she's working two jobs, she's a warrior. And it's the resilience,
the discipline, the showing up for yourself. Yeah.
All of that. And I never considered myself a warrior, even after 31 years of doing search and rescue. I had a meltdown about 2 years ago, and that really, I had started my path of healing, and then I had a meltdown, and primarily it was the VA disability process that brought up a bunch of my old stuff.
Mm-hmm.
When you're filling out that paperwork and they want dates, times, particularly on the PTS side of the house, right?
Yeah.
And so that was like pulling out a logbook of all the shit that I had buried. I didn't want to talk about anymore.
And it still finds a way to come back and bite you in the ass, no matter how deep you've buried it.
This is going to be a good thing. And I went down a rabbit hole, and a good friend of mine pulled me aside, and he had been law enforcement. Then he was CIA paramilitary doing the highest of high speed shit. And he basically grabbed me by the collar and goes, you're a fucking warrior, dude. And I'm like, I am? And he goes, shit, yeah.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
That was a mind shift for me. And talk about the tribe, 7+ years ago, being that fat, depressed drunk, I knew I needed to change something. And so down the road from me, there was a sign that said jiu-jitsu. And at that time, you listened to Rogan, Jocko, all the guys at 8 years ago, those were still are some of the top podcasters. And what do they talk about all the time? They talk about jiu-jitsu. And of course, I was a kid. I was the Chuck Norris age, right? So everything Chuck Norris did was badass.
Yeah. I mean, still for me, because Chuck Norris was Walker, Texas Ranger when I was growing up.
100%. And so martial arts was always something I thought I wanted to do. I never did.
Yeah.
And so at the age, I'm 59 now. So at the age of 52, I decided to sign up for jiu-jitsu. And I'll never forget the first night because I was terrified. It was the scariest thing. I had done post-military.
I love this story too, by the way.
And
So for context, you and I met in a jiu-jitsu entrepreneur mastermind that's put on by one of the most incredible humans I've ever met, Michael Cragholm. I love that guy so much. He's such a genuine human, and he's motivated, and he just motivates me to do more. But we met in there, and then started talking, invited you to this show, and all of that. And I envy you, man, because starting jiu-jitsu at 52. That's quite the commitment, and I can feel it because I'm 40 and I'm about to start my jiu-jitsu journey if this hip will ever heal, and
right.
I have a lot of the same feelings that you have. You know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%. And it was, to set the stage, it was a rainy Northwest night in October, and I'm sitting out front of the academy in the pouring rain, and I got there early, and I'm sitting in my car talking myself out of going through the doors. And thank God I did. And there's so many avenues for guys that are in this position, that transitional piece. I'm not saying that jiu-jitsu is the only way. It's the way that worked for me.
Yeah.
And like I always joke, I'm like, I don't care if you guys go out and join a pickleball league. You have to do something that's active and that involves relationships.
And I would say even a little bit of competitiveness, just a little bit. I mean, because I'm not sitting here saying like you go to a jiu-jitsu dojo and it's like super competitive like all the time and you're going to hate it. But like there's there's a little element because we are, at least for men, I'm not a female, so I can't speak to them. But like, I don't want this. For example, if you and I were to roll, you would own me. I don't have any jiu-jitsu experience. I was a wrestler in high school for my whole life, basically, plus then combatives in the Army, which I was decent at. It's kind of a translation, but you've been in jiu-jitsu for 7 years and you're 5'7" and 160-ish pounds or whatever. I'm 6'3", 216 pounds, and you'll own me. Right. Like, so there's like this element of like, I've got to know my shit or try to like, not let this guy own me.
Right. Yeah. Oh, that's there. And that's the ego piece that I love watching disappear.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of cliches in the jiu-jitsu world, and they're cliches because they're true. Like the mats don't lie. You cannot hide from anything when you're on the mat.
Right.
And it was a self-fulfilling prophecy because probably after the second week of doing class, I was like, oh, I'm not going to drink tonight because I'm going to train tomorrow.
Yep.
And I don't want to feel like shit.
Mm-hmm.
And so that started the releasing the grip of alcohol on me because I was like, okay, I don't need this. So I never completely gave up. We will have a cocktail, but the rules in our house now is you never drink alone and you only drink when you're happy. When I say drink, I'm talking about maybe 2 cocktails on the weekend, sitting on the deck enjoying the evening. And that's it. We rarely drink at the house. That's my wife and I, and she was drinking a lot too. And that was one thing that helped my journey, is having support from my wife. Because I know a lot of guys, you jump into this jiu-jitsu journey, and a lot of wives are like, why are you gone all the time? We're at the point, if work gets in the way or another commitment and I miss class, or I'm feeling lazy and like, maybe I won't go tonight. My wife's like, oh, you're going. Because an hour and a half at class and I come home, I'm a different guy.
I've heard that from so many people, and it's a reason I'm pursuing it. One, because Michael's such an influence, then the conversations with you, but also there's that element of keeping that ego in check, getting humbled a little bit and pushing yourself kind of. I mean, it's going to be really uncomfortable for a long time for me. I know, because I just don't have the knowledge, but it's a journey, and how could it not make you a better person? It's physical, it's cardio, it's thinking, it's learning, it's everything wrapped into one event. It's pretty amazing.
Well, and again, huge shout out to Michael. He is an amazing human being. And if you're listening to this podcast and you do jiu-jitsu or you're thinking about it, check out the Grapple app unpaid advertisement. Check out the Grapple app that Michael started. It's amazing. And that will help you get started for sure. But that tribe was built on the mats for me, because and I'm a firm believer that before guys can sit down and talk eye to eye, they have to do things shoulder to shoulder. They have to do hard things together. It's a bond, right? And I think that's a bond that since men walk this earth, it's like sitting around a campfire. There's something magic about a campfire. Yeah. There's something magic about doing sweating, bleeding, and there's a trust element when you start jiu-jitsu, right? Like you said, if you and I roll and I get you in a submission, you have to trust that I'm not going to break your arm. I'm not going to make you pass out. When you tap, you trust that I'm going to let go.
Yeah.
And I have seen a lot of guys with PTSD come do jiu-jitsu, and it's really hard for them about the first 6 months, because they don't have that trust built in. And then all of a sudden it's just a switch.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I got it. And they understand that trust is so important. So what did I find? I found trust. I found guys that from all walks of life, right? Anything from we have cops, we have firefighters, we have former drug addicts, we have former criminals. And again, the mats don't lie. We don't care. And so that community is centered around a sport or a martial art, but it grows from there. Like Saturday, we do an annual barbecue at our place, and 60 plus people, 28 pounds of brisket. And it was amazing. And because they brought their wives, and then the wives are like, oh, I'm so glad my husband's doing this, and it's great to meet everybody. And so, everybody got together here at our spot, at our place. And it was amazing to kind of step back and watch everybody interacting and going, this is what I was missing for years after I transitioned.
Yeah, man. So, Russ, we're coming to the end of our time here, man. And you said something to me in the green room before we started recording. And you said what really heals you and helps fill your cup up now is being there for other people. So the last few minutes here, tell everybody how they can reach out and find you, look for guidance, mentorship, whatever, because I know you're that type of person. I know that fills your cup up, that's what you want to be doing. So anybody who resonates with anything you've said here today or wants to dive deeper into your story, how can they find you? What's the best way to contact you? Are you willing to help them? I think you are, obviously, all that good stuff.
Yeah, and I'm not a social media superstar, but I am on Instagram, and it's Russ Torg. So my first name and Torg. That's how you can find me. Send me a message, and I'm happy to talk to anybody.
Dude, I love it, man. Thank you so much for being here. Thanks for telling your story and being vulnerable in the struggles that you face, because that's how we end the problems that are facing our community right now. And I'm just really grateful that we connected, man, in the Jiu-Jitsu Mastermind and continue the relationship outside of it. And someday I can't wait to get up there and, make a little detour from Olympia to where you're at and come roll with you for a little bit.
Let's do it, bro.
Yeah, brother.
Always happy to help you out, and I'm just grateful for what you're doing. Your mission's important, and support it 100%.
I appreciate it, brother. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Russ Torgerson. Please, if anything here reached out to you, sparks curiosity, don't hesitate to reach out to him. He is more than approachable. He wants to help, and he's like me. He just wants to be the guy he didn't have when he got out, steer you in the right direction, so you don't have to waste in Russ's case, 9 years of his life, 8.5 years of my life. It's not necessary. So please like, rate, review, subscribe, download, share this with anybody who needs to hear it. And we'll see you guys next week with another banging episode. Take care, everybody. That's our show, and I'm truly thankful you've joined us at The Strategic Veteran. If our conversation today sparked curiosity, or if you're ready to elevate your game, I'm here to help. Visit thestrategicveteran.com for exclusive show notes and resources, or to book a coaching session directly with me. Take a moment to subscribe to our podcast and share your review. Your support makes all the difference. For more insights and daily strategies, let's connect on LinkedIn and keep the conversation going. Remember, this isn't just a podcast, it's your strategic advantage in action. Until our next rendezvous, stay bold and continue the mission.